what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it.
It kind of seems like a popular trend to say that LSU is overrated, and not just overrated, but the most overrated team in the SEC. For me, that's a little hard to get behind because, well, first off, just look where they're ranked preseason. Whichever poll you look at, it's either 12 or 13. They're kind of that fringe playoff spot. I mean, guys, that's right there in the middle of the top 25 polls. I don't really know how you can be ranked 13th and be one of the most overrated teams in the SEC, but this was something that Hester brought up last week. It was Brandon Walker of Barstool Sports on their podcast was talking about, overrated, underrated in the SEC, and he said, LSU is my most overrated team. Tennessee is my most underrated team. Well, it happened again. Earlier this week, CBS Sports put out stuff. It was Will Bacchus and another CBS reporter. They both agreed that LSU was their most overrated SEC team heading in to the 2024 season. Here's what they said. They said the Tigers lost their top passer, top two rushers, top two receivers, and offensive coordinator from a team that finished outside of the top 10 last season. That's all fair. Defensive coordinator Blake Baker will help improve the defense, but flipping play callers on both sides of the ball and relying on a host of unproven options to take on starring roles makes it difficult to see LSU seriously landing in a college football playoff discussion like a preseason number 13 ranking might assume. A road slate featuring Texas A&M, Florida, and Arkansas could present unexpected landmines. Florida and Arkansas are going to suck this year. You may very well drop one of those games because they are on the road. They are not the teams that they were 5 or 6 years ago. Look, if you want to hate on LSU and you want to say they're the most overrated team in the SEC, that's fine. But a lot like Brandon Walker, they chose their most underrated teams, and CBS Sports interviewed all of their sports writers, and one of them has Tennessee as their most underrated team. They said the Volunteers have James Pierce on the defensive side of the ball and possibly the best offensive and defensive players in the league. They said Nico Iamaleava at quarterback, a 5-star recruit, has potential to be one of the best signal callers in the country. His talent combined with Josh Heupel's offense, combined with a defense that projects to be pretty solid, is a very intriguing combination. Again, all fair, but LSU and Tennessee, in my opinion, are the two most similar teams in the SEC coming into this season. Garrett Nussmeier and Nico Iamaleava are pretty much a wash. They're both coming in their first year as a starter. I would actually give the edge to Nussmeier just because he's been in the program for 4 years, and this is his third year under Brian Kelly. Iamaleava came in. He threw for 300 yards last year. He threw for 2 touchdowns. He did some nice things coming in and mop-up duty for him. Garrett Nussmeier, same thing. He started the bowl game. He played well in it. Now, Tennessee should have a little bit of a better defense than LSU, but Josh Heupel's always kind of had inconsistencies there. They're really good a week. They're really bad a week. They do have James Pierce. He's probably going to be a top 10 pick in next year's NFL draft, but I worry about the depth everywhere else on that defense. I think they're going to be solid. Do I think they're going to be tops in the league? No, I don't. Tennessee will have a better defensive line than LSU. I think that is the one area that we could chalk up a win for Tennessee. I just mentioned Pierce. They got a bunch of other weapons there as well. But LSU has the better offensive line. Also, the Tigers have way better offensive weapons. Squirrel White, who was third team All-SEC in the latest poll, is probably their best weapon on the outside. Now, they have Dylan Sampson at running back. He's going to be fine. I still think he's a step back from Jalen Wright, who was there a year ago, who I think might do some pretty nice things for the Miami Dolphins and surprise some people this year as a rookie. So I really look at LSU and Tennessee as kind of a wash. And they're saying, oh, well, in the Josh Heupel offense, I get it, but Joe Sloan was here a year ago, and he was a bigger part of that offense than most people think. He was the offensive coordinator in a bowl game where you struggled in the first quarter, but after Nussmeier got some comfortability under him, that offense was really good against Wisconsin. So, yes, you're breaking in a new play caller, but he starts talking about play callers on each side of the ball. I get it, but you're also a much improved play caller. In my opinion, Blake Baker is one of the best defensive coordinators in all of college football, and I think Tiger fans are going to figure that out. Yes, you break in a new play caller, but you fired the last guy because he sucked, and your defense was ranked in the hundreds last year when your offense was number 1 in the country. I don't look at that as a negative, as bringing in a new play caller on the defensive side of the ball. The scheme's going to be a lot different. Yesterday, the 4 of us sat here and talked about which breakout player we were looking at on defense. All of us had a different answer, and they were all legit. Whether it's edge rushers, whether it's the linebacker group that's directly under Blake Baker. Hester mentioned Major Burns, who's going to be a big factor because he's playing that star role. Yes, the defense is different, but I think it's going to be changed for the better. I don't really know if you can say that about Tennessee. Sure, Heupel's going to have a good offense, but they say, oh, you could have the best offensive player in the conference in Nico Iamaleava. Why can't Garrett Nussmeier be the best offensive player in the conference? They have about the same amount of experience, and Nussmeier's been in his program a lot longer than Iamaleava. Another team that I feel falls in this category along with Tennessee that a lot of people are calling underrated is the Missouri Tigers. That was on this list that CBS Sports put out multiple times of people saying, hey, this is the most underrated team in the conference. I get it. They won 11 games last year. They had an incredible season, and they bring a lot back. You lose Cody Schrader at running back, but I thought the Drinkwitz did a really good job of bringing in Marcus Carroll and Nate Noel to kind of carry the load in the backfield. They got 2 really solid running backs there. You still have Luther Burden, who's the best receiver in the conference. I don't really think it's close. And you return Brady Cook, so your starting quarterback's back. You lose a lot of players on the defensive side of the ball to the NFL draft, and you lose Blake Baker, who took that team from like 130th in the league, in the country, total defense, to like 35th in just 2 seasons. Losing that is a much bigger loss than people are giving it credit for. Now, you bring in Corey Batoon, who was really good at South Alabama last year. He had a top 15 to 20 defense, but they have a really easy schedule. They lose a ton on the defensive side of the ball. And everybody's like, oh, well, Missouri, they won 11 games. They did. They have the easiest schedule by far in the SEC. But when you look at Eli Drinkwitz, who I think is a really good head coach, last year was the outlier, right? It's the exception, not the norm. I mean, he was, hovering around a 500 record, even a few games below 500 until last year. And then he wins 11 games. That's great. Can he do it again? I'm not going to be one of those to jump on the bandwagon. I like Eli Drinkwitz. I think Brady Cook's a little bit of an underrated quarterback. And I think Luther Burden's the best receiver in the SEC. But in order to get on board with this Missouri being underrated and all that, they're going to have to prove that last year was not just a flash in the pan. Can they be a consistently good program in the SEC? It's something we haven't seen. They were good under Gary Pinkel. Once he had to step away, I mean, they were really SEC bottom feeders until about a year ago. And again, Drinkwitz has that program trending in the right direction. You bring in Corey Batoon, who's a good defensive coordinator to replace Blake Baker, but with the loss of Baker, which I think is huge, all the players on defense, they had more defensive players last year drafted than the Georgia Bulldogs. Think about that. Think about how good Georgia's defense is. Missouri had more players drafted in the NFL this past draft than the Georgia Bulldogs did. I mean, they're rebuilding the entire defense. Maybe they are a little underrated, but to say that Tennessee and Missouri are just pretty much across the board now considered 2 of the most underrated teams in the SEC, and then you look at a team like LSU and you say, well, they're one of the most overrated teams in the SEC, I cannot get behind that because I think all 3 of these teams are so similar. I'll even give Missouri a slight bump over LSU and Tennessee because they return their starting quarterback, but Tennessee and LSU, it's kind of a wash across the board. I don't really understand why it's just such a popular pick to say, well, LSU's definitely overrated, Tennessee's definitely underrated. Look at something I'm going to be keeping an eye on as the season moves along.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.